Hi, everybody. Welcome to another great webinar from Equipment Zone. Happy to be here. And we're doing something a little bit different today. You have Roy and I as usual. I'm Jeff Morgenthaler.
And I'm Roy Huseman.
Hi, Roy. What we're doing different today is we've been listening to you guys and some of your ideas. And so we've had these suggestions about just an open forum where you guys can ask whatever you want. Nothing off the table about tech support. So there are a lot of questions out there. Feel free to ask those in the chat. We don't have a Q&A up. For some reason, we haven't figured that out on Zoom for this one. But if you have questions for tech support, Roy is going to answer them. I'm going to ask those to Roy, and he's going to answer them. So this is going to be a great time. Nothing off the table. Ask whatever you want about support. We're going to do our best to answer those in a timely manner. And we also have a few of our own questions. So anything to add before we get started, Roy?
No, that's basically it. Kind of like an open forum, like you said, and see how it goes. See how popular it becomes.
Well, let's get the ball rolling, Roy, with the most popular questions that so you and I talked about this a little bit before we started. And I asked you, what is the most popular thing that you get asked most about in tech support? And you said the SpeedTreater or pre-treat in general comes up, and specifically about maintenance. Is that right?
Why it really resorts back to poor maintenance in some aspects, or having nozzles that are older that sometimes people feel that they should last a lot longer than they actually do. And they're not spraying properly. So rather than purchase new nozzles or actually maintain nozzles by taking them out every night would be key because of the pre-treat having a salt in it, as well as the makeup of the pre-treat tends to clog the nozzles fairly quickly. So it's just better. Some pre-treats clog quicker than others. So that also helps, having a cleaner running pre-treat. So depending on the brands that you're using out there, again, best thing is to take the nozzle out every night at the end of the day, or flush it with water in some systems that don't allow you to pull the nozzles out.
Okay, good. I have a couple questions about that, Roy. So if I pull the nozzle out every day, what am I doing with it? Am I rinsing it? Am I soaking it? What do I do with that nozzle when I pull it out?
Well, just leave it in water. Distilled water is a good place to put it on a regular basis. Obviously, there are products out there like our own for a long-term soak to break down anything that might be clogging the nozzle. I think it's the filter that probably tends to clog the most, that's in front of the nozzle. Depending on the machine where that's located, you definitely want to clean that out as well, making sure you're getting a good flow of solution through the machine and to the nozzle itself.
So you'll get a longer life out of those things, the screen and the nozzle, if you're doing that. How long should I expect those to last? Is that something that I can expect to replace every week or once a month? What do you think?
Well, like with our machine, we give 2 nozzles that are the bigger spray nozzles and 2 filters. And basically, if you rotate those, I would venture to say you probably got about a year before you start introducing a new nozzle and filter.
Wow, a year. That's good. So if you're properly maintaining it, you can get a year out of that.
Out of the sets.
Yeah, awesome.
So you're rotating the sets every 3 weeks or however long it takes to start giving you an issue with the spray. If you're taking them out every night at the end of the day, if you're leaving them in the machine, they're not going to last as long.
Okay. So I got a question about this from Andre. He says, my SpeedTreater sprays the pre-treatment heavier on the edges and then in the middle. So he's getting a heavier, uneven spray. Is that from a clogged nozzle?
It's from a combination of a nozzle and the actual filter itself. Okay. So when you put a nozzle or a filter in, you want to keep them in pairs. You don't want to just replace the nozzle or just buy the nozzle. The filter is a pressurized filter, or they call it a check valve. So ultimately, it's trying to regulate how much pressure is getting to the nozzle itself. So if there's not enough pressure, nothing will come out of the nozzle until it gets to a certain pressure to try to give an even spray out of that nozzle. So ultimately, if there's an issue with that valve, then you're going to have a problem with the way the spray is coming out of the nozzle. The other thing, as the machine gets older and the pump gets older, you definitely want to make sure that you're flushing that system out too, by taking the nozzle out and opening up the side of the machine to control your valve that sends the solution to the nozzle versus back into the container. So, you know, turning that valve back and forth ultimately will give you the ability to flush both those lines out thoroughly without the nozzle in there, putting those items back in, and then setting up your appropriate pressure, making sure that looking in the machine as you're doing that, watching the spray come down, you want to make sure that there's a certain point where you can see that it actually has a lot of pressure behind that spray, and it's an upside down V, so to speak, that gives a nice even fan blade. So that's what you're looking for.
And as always, if somebody is just stuck on something like that and just can't figure it out, you can always call our support team, and we would be happy to walk you through some of those more complicated things. But it sounds like the theme of this is maintenance, as it is with all machines. Just properly maintain, that's going to save you a lot of money. I know I've had people buying a lot of those spray nozzles and those screens, and if you're properly maintaining them, then they're going to last longer and save you a lot of money. Somebody asked, why do those little plastic washers cost almost $5 each? Honestly, we don't set the price. I don't know, maybe because they're a specialty washer, but if those washers, you shouldn't have to replace those, right?
Well, at the end of the day, if you buy the set, there's a set with the clogging no more, the check valve, the other filter, which is the one that goes on the other end of the inlet hose, the washers, and a nozzle is like $99 for everything. So it's just easier to buy it in the set, and then you can buy an extra filter and check valve set as well, and that gives you two sets to where you can turn and rotate for the next year. So at the end of the day, it's not a lot of money if you keep up with cleaning the items. The washers won't need to be replaced if you don't over tighten your valve. Obviously, you know you need to tighten it. Some people don't, and then they wonder why it's dribbling all over the shirt. So once you hand tighten the brass nut with the valve in there, you just give it a quarter turn with a wrench. If you turn it too tight, then you're going to break or crack those little plastic washers, causing you to have to replace them. Okay,
great. That's a great answer. We have a question here a little bit away from the pre-treat machine, so let's deviate from there a little bit. Why do you recommend a humidifier similar to a swamp cooler rather than a misting humidifier if the misting humidifier doesn't mist on the DTG printer? Does that make sense to you?
Does it make sense to me why you wouldn't? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, why do you recommend a humidifier similar to a swamp cooler rather than a misting humidifier?
Well, typically, if you look at a misting humidifier and why they're used for when people are sick, it's gonna atomize the water into more of a steam, almost like being in a steam room, which will create condensation. And no matter where it's at in the room, if you're using it to the point where you're building your humidity to the level you need to be at, you're going to get more water vapor in the air in the form of a steam versus having it just being in the air naturally, like the swamp cooler type of humidifier where it blows over the water and the water's kind of evaporating into the air versus shooting out in a steam form.
So the air is going to hold the humidifier moisture a little bit better than if you're just spraying it.
Well, it's going to cover more square feet too.
Okay.
I mean, the smaller misting humidifiers actually cost at the end of the day, you know, in as far as the size of them in comparison how many square feet they cover, I mean, they're more expensive at the end of the day. I know the one we kind of recommend is about $150 at Home Depot. But if you look around, they do have a single tank unit that's around 99 bucks. Same brand, which is the one we have here, and one unit does our whole office. And it's rated at 3,500 square feet. So it does a great job. And we're in Arizona. So some days, you know, we're putting water in it every couple days, and sometimes it'll last a week, depending on the time of the year.
Yeah. It's a very short window in that time of the year, by the way, here in Arizona. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Good answers. Good answers. So we're going to move along here, and let's talk about what I think is a very common question that I hear, and you probably hear this too, and that's why do my prints not look as bright and vibrant as your sample prints, or why do my prints look dull? And you and I, we talk about this all the time, right? So we have several things that we can dive into that would cause that.
Well, I think one of the main things is the shirt that you're choosing. So if you're choosing a shirt that has a looser weave, a more coarse weave, it's going to require more pre-treat and more ink. So if I'm in Garment Creator and I just go with the standard defaults of level 3 on dark garments, for instance, which is most people are concerned about printing on dark products, some of these looser weave fabrics like a Gildan or something of that nature, or these cotton core products out there, are going to require more ink right out of the gate. So, you know, you're looking at increasing that automatically. So when you're looking at what you're selling your customer, you want to take a closer look. Don't just look at the fabric from afar. If you take a shirt like this, for instance, and you can kind of see my logo right there, but this is going to require a lot less ink because the fibers are so tightly woven together. In fact, if I ran this at a level 3, my white would be puddling on this fabric. So I got to cut my white back in order to print on a shirt like this. So, you know, a shirt that is more of a combed ring spun cotton, tightly woven, is going to print good, image after image, if you just go with the standard default levels. On the coarser fabrics, you're already cranking up your dials to get more pre-treat and more ink on those products in order to even start getting a decent print. So, you know, that's the part that you're starting with. And then am I having an issue on the back end when I go to cure, where let's say, for instance, it looks great after I printed and then it doesn't after I cure. That could be other issues like printing on blends where you're actually reactivating the dyes, and those dyes are getting into the white base and discoloring the white base and giving it more of a muted look. So in cases like that, you have to run tests on certain products, and some just won't work, or I might be able to cut back the temperature to minimize that, but am I going to cut it too low and sacrifice washability? So you got to kind of balance that.
You brought up blends, and so, you know, I've heard people struggle with 50-50, where 50% of the shirt is polyester, or even, you know, other shirts. The amount of polyester in the shirt, does that affect how that's going to be bright or not bright or vibrant?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Amount of polyester in the shirt. So you brought up.
Oh,
blends.
yeah. Well, the thing is that when the manufacturers have a blend that involves polyester, which most of them do, whether it's a dual blend product or a tri-blend, is always going to include polyester. When you colorize polyester fibers, you have to incorporate heat into the process of dyeing the shirt in order to get an even transition of color between the different fibers. So when I go back and I cure a product after printing on it, I'm reactivating that dye because the residual dyeing chemicals are still in the product until it's washed either by you or your customer. So that's the one thing to keep in mind.
Okay. You know, I also know that the graphic, how you prepare your graphics can affect the way your prints come out. And I know there's a lot of graphic artists out there that are used to designing in CMYK. And it seems logical that because the printer prints in CMYK, you might think, well, then I should design in CMYK, but it's better to design in RGB. Is that right?
Yeah. And PNG is probably a better format because that kind of forces you to be in that RGB color space. And although it prints using CMYK ink, the driver interpolates through RGB. So you're going to get a little bit better color if you were to take the same file, save it as a TIFF, and then save it as a PNG, and just take it and just print it normal. You're going to see a little bit better color on the PNG than you will the TIFF.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that when I design in RGB, I get a deeper, richer black, a more true red, a brighter, deeper red. So I would encourage people, and part of the struggle there also is that if you're getting a file from a client, you don't always know how that was prepared. And so that's just something that you're going to have to discuss with them. If they created the file themselves, if they had somebody else create it, if they got it off the internet, a lot of times you don't know how that file was prepared. And so maybe there's adjustments you can do in Garment Creator. And I know some of the settings you use in Garment Creator will affect how you're.
Well, one of the most popular formats out there today that's really emerging is the PNG format. And if you take a file that's PNG, it's already RGB.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you don't really need to worry about it unless it comes in as a TIFF.
All right. And then also, we've talked about pre-treat already, but the way you pre-treat a shirt can affect whether or not it prints out properly, bright, vibrant or not, correct?
Yes. The amount of pre-treat, depending on the fabric, is going to impact your end result. So let's say, for instance, if I have a Gildan shirt and we're just talking about our pre-treater, and we have a dial on there with different settings. Although our pre-treater, we say, oh, let's go with number 5 with dark garments that we're going to put a white base on. Most customers, I'll tell them that that's a starting point. Okay, if you're dealing with the next level, a Bella Canvas, a Cotton Heritage, 5 is a great starting point. If I'm going to do something where the weave is a little loose and I can see it's a little deeper grain in the weave. I mean, if you take a shirt and put it up to your face and look at it really close, you can see the weave pattern, whether it be more of a waffle look, herringbone, a braid, and how tight the fibers are together and how flat that surface is. So if it ends up being something really loose, it's going to require more pre-treat. So if I use a 5.5, for instance, on a Gildan and run that through my SpeedTreater and then turn around and put a Cotton Heritage and run that through the SpeedTreater, it's going to look like I poured milk on the Cotton Heritage. It's going to have so much pre-treat on it, it's going to be pulling white liquid all over it. It's going to look like it's going to be dripping when I pick it up off of the bed of the pre-treater. So if you look at the Gildan, for instance, in comparison, it's saturated into the product and it's in there, sitting in there. It's not dripping off. It's not running. So you know that you're putting enough or getting to that point. Same thing with a sweatshirt. It's going to require more pre-treat. And some sweatshirts, depending on how thick they are and how tight the weave is, will require more pre-treat than others. So it's all in looking at it from, if I'm pulling up on there, I obviously have too much pre-treat. But if I'm barely dampening the surface of the fabric, then I don't have enough pre-treat on there. I'm going to have to apply more. And again, running a test. It's always good to buy an extra garment and then reduce your images down. I always see people will sometimes buy an extra garment and they'll leave a full-size image on there, and they can only do one print, and then they're kind of screwed. So if you reduce your images down, you could reduce it down and then pre-treat it a second time, or add a little bit more pre-treat at a smaller number, and go ahead and cure it and print it again. So you can compile pre-treat in a different dimension, like do half the shirt on a certain number and then the other half at another number, or do it in 3 sections, or however you want to do it beforehand to try to see where the best print's going to be.
Oh, that's smart.
So that's another way to do it.
Okay, awesome. You know, I also hear people, and we've done this. I've actually done it. What do you think about doing a hover press before you heat press a print, or maybe let it dry a little bit before you heat press it? Does that come into play?
I always keep that in mind. Yeah. So basically, in a production environment, the key thing is getting as many shirts per hour out of that machine as possible. So number one thing is you want to keep feeding the printer. Number 2 is to keep up with the printer with a pre-treated shirt. So if you're pre-treating in advance, that's fairly easy because you're just doing a quick press prior to printing for 10, 20 seconds, depending on, you know, where you're at in the country. If you are pre-treating as you go, which I typically like to do, within 10 minutes or so of getting started, I'll have 6, 7 shirts pre-treated. And then as I'm pulling shirts off of the printer, I'll set them on a table and I'll let those pile up and then start working those in, just keeping track in the order that I'm putting them in, where the oldest one I'm going to grab first and put that in the heat press. So if I have one pre-treater, one printer, and one heat press, I don't want to tie that heat press up with hovering. Yeah. I want to use it for pressing only. So I will, in lieu of hovering, just leave the shirt sit out for a few minutes, allowing for the fabric to absorb the moisture out of the ink that's sitting on top of it. Because if there's any moisture still in the ink, that's where you're going to start having some of your problems, because the ink's not going to set up properly. So I got to allow that time. Usually you want to cure your shirt enough after pre-treating to allow that fabric to be more like a sponge and suck the water out of the ink as it's sitting on top. It's kind of like if I have a moist sponge and I try to wipe a counter, at some point I'm moving water around. If I have a really wrung out sponge where it's just barely damp on the surface because I've gotten all the water out of it, then as soon as I put it on the counter next to water, it just sucks it all in. Even water that it's kind of touching, you don't even have to go and wipe that area. It's just going to suck it up into the sponge, similar to the shirt. If it's bone dry, it's going to suck the water a lot quicker out of the ink as it's layering up on top of the fabric. So that's really what I want to make sure happens. So the more ink I'm putting on, especially if you're doing a level 6 and you don't want to incorporate too many pauses or long pauses, you want to let that shirt sit out a little bit longer than you would if you're just doing a standard level 3, 4, or 5 or what have you. Typically 3 and 5 are probably the most popular settings, as well as 6 on Garment Creator. So that's the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, great answer. And I love how you brought in the production side of that answer in here, because there are plenty of times where I've printed and heat pressed and it looks fantastic. And then there are times when I've thought I should let these dry a little bit, and you know, I'm bottlenecking at the heat press a little bit anyway, so that's not an issue. But you know, it brings up another question, and this has been coming up a lot actually with clients lately. I've been talking to clients a lot about dryers, conveyor dryers, and a lot of people looking at getting those to improve their production process. But also they think that their prints will come out better. In my opinion, I've seen them come out, some come out okay, but most of them come out great. What's your point of view on that?
Well, I think they're great to have myself. I mean, if you're growing your business, incorporating a conveyor dryer is going to be one of the things that I'm going to look to do. The first thing I think that's most important is how you set up the machine. A lot of them out there, I think, are a little bit more complex than people think as far as setting them up, depending on where you're at. The electricity in the building, you know, if you're pulling 220 versus 230 versus 240, it's going to change the way the heat is put down on the fabric. So you want to set the machine up and kind of customize your settings. I always tell customers, start out with a light shirt first, a white shirt. If you can get a white shirt to cure properly, that's pre-treated. Go with a pre-treated shirt without burning it, discoloring the fabric. Once you go to the darker products, you're not going to have any problem. Usually people start with the dark products first, and then when they have to start running some lighter stuff, they start getting discoloration or burning or browning and things of that nature, because they were running a little higher on the levels and times that they should have been, because they have more flexibility with the darker colors.
Okay, great. So
it's definitely something, again, at that point, then you're just using your heat press for a quick pressing to flatten the fibers prior to printing. So you're doing, you know, depending again where you're at in the country, you know, I always say 15 to 25 seconds. If you're more in a more humid environment, I would be more 20, 25 seconds versus a less humid environment like 15 seconds.
okay, perfect. So totally makes sense for production, obviously, because you're not having to stop and heat press. You're just dropping it on the belt. But you're saying there's some dialing it in. You're going to have to, it's not as simple as just plugging it in and going. You've got to figure out the electrical. You got to dial in the temperature, the heater heights, all these different things. But we assist
to
with
get
that.
it to function properly. Yes, we assist with that, but it is a trial and error for an individual to set up, because your building or wherever you're located is going to dictate the electricity that's coming out of the wall. I mean, you can't change that. So, you know, it depends on where you're at. That's the starting point.
And just a reminder for anybody who's joined us a little bit late, if you have any questions at all, nothing's off the table for tech support questions, type it into the chat. We're happy to address it, talk about it best we can. And that's what this webinar is all about. So, all right, I have another great question for you, Roy. And I've seen this myself, and I've had several people ask me this question. Why do I get little tiny white specks popping up in my print?
Okay, well, there's two ways to have that happen. One is I've pre-treated my shirt with a lot of pre-treat, if it's a thinner garment, or a situation where I'm putting too much white ink down, okay? And with the pre-treat, I didn't cure it enough. So my white ink is staying wet, okay? So when my color ink comes down, there's small droplets that are falling onto the fabric. Not quite microscopic, but they're very small. So if my white ink's wet, I'm going to lose some of those color droplets into the white, which is going to let the white show through in some of those areas, if that makes sense. So if I'm properly cured, where my white ink is going to hit the fabric, stay on top, the moisture is going to start pulling out of that white, allowing it to set up quicker, then I'm going to be ready for my color droplets to come down. All right, so if I'm printing and adding more white base, which I could easily do and redistribute that white, if it's all curing properly and I'm getting that after the cure. So where am I getting that white showing through? If it's before the cure, right after the print, my shirt's too wet. I need to incorporate a pause. I need to do something to let that white set up a little bit to allow for the color, because I'm losing some of the color into the white, which is allowing it to show through. If it's happening at the heat press or the curing, then that's because my overall print has too much water in it. And what happens is if I don't allow, that's why I like to let shirts sit sometimes for a minute or two to allow for that water to pull out of the pigment of the inks that's on top of the fabric. Because if there's too much water in there, as soon as it gets into that high heat, that water turns to steam, and steam pushes things around. So it could actually push the white up through the color, creating little volcanoes, little pimples and things of that nature. So if you're seeing that after the cure, it's because there's a little bit too much moisture in the ink itself as far as water content. So you need to allow for that to suck out of the ink itself into the fabric.
Yeah, and I get the feeling too that some clients are feeling like, to make this print look better, I'm just going to crank it up to a level 6 and I'm going to put down a double pass on the white ink. And that white ink is just too heavy of an underbase. When they put that CMYK on there, it's like you said, that water's not coming out of that ink fast enough before the CMYK goes on it. But with this printer, we print the highlight white, so you can put down a proper underbase and still make your white areas pop, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's where, you know, as I mentioned, between the level 3, level 4, level 5, which are the lower levels with one pass of white, both level 3 and level 5 give the highlight white. And level 4 is there to not have a highlight white, but then I always tell customers, why confuse yourself? If you want to go to the higher color resolution, just go to a 5. If you don't have a highlight white, it's not going to apply a highlight white. If you don't have white type on the image or any areas that are big areas of white ink, it's not going to apply any ink. So it'd be the same as running it at level 4 in that aspect. It really depends on the design whether or not you're even going to get that highlight white.
Okay, great. Thank you. I got this question about, we were just talking about dryer. Somebody asked this question about white settings. So what settings, I guess is what they're asking, what settings would you use on a Little Red X3D dryer when printing with white ink as far as time and temperature? So that's pretty specific. I'm not sure if you can answer that one.
Okay, well, white settings on the dryer, I don't know if that's,
yeah,
I don't understand that question. I mean, are we talking about putting a white setting in Garment Creator to put on a shirt that's just tight?
Oh, sorry,
or things of that nature?
White shirts so they don't burn.
Oh.
I was thinking
okay. Well, basically, you're going to set the machine up. So depending on which machine you got, if you're getting a Vaztex machine, there are different settings for time and temperature. If you get the single head unit, which is the smaller machine, I think it's even 110, or the dual thermal head unit or the triple head unit, you're going to raise and lower those different positions, and then you're going to start with a certain time. So if you're asking me where the starting point is, it depends on the machine that you purchase, but I would start with a little bit faster settings first. They'll give you a chart when you buy your machine of a faster setting, a medium setting, and then a longer time setting where you have longer dwell times, slower belt speed. Those are going to run at a little bit lower temperatures. So it's kind of a balance. And the thing to keep in mind with some white shirts, some manufacturers, there may be a little bit of residual bleach in that product, and that's going to brown regardless. So you want to make sure that you have a shirt that you can press in the heat press that you're already using before you actually go and start using a product to just start running through and you can always cut up the shirt too. You can cut it in half and then in quarters. So cutting the shirt, the back of the shirt off, cut that in half, cut the front of the shirt in half. You got 4 pieces. You can put 4 images on them, and you want to make sure that you're curing the ink properly. And again, you want to pre-treat these shirts and keep the ink on the surface level instead of letting it absorb into the fabric like you typically may do with a white shirt. And then go ahead and you'll have 4 different shirts that you can run through and at different times and temperatures and positions of your element. to start out. You can try on the lower end, and then after that, you get one that works, then go ahead and start washing that shirt. You got to make sure you're getting the washability. If you have a laser sensor for heat, the temperature of the ink on the fabric, if you can kind of get it into the machine, you're looking for 330 degrees at 60-second dwell time. So that's your target temperature.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up cutting your shirts in half. I cut all of my shirts in half because belly shirts are totally in right now here in Arizona. That's how I wear them. But
whoa, that's a hard pass.
Hey,
I have to jump in.
Jay,
Yeah,
back to being in the background.
that's not appropriate. I'm gonna have to. That's timeout. You're in timeout, Jeff.
I'll just say this about the dryers. You know, most of the dryers I sell are different configurations and pretty unique to everybody's situation. There's a lot of different models that you can purchase and different configurations. So we'll just leave it at that. We need to speak to you offline and get that dialed in, or you can speak to Bastex and get that set up.
Well, if I can interject one quick second, the smallest unit, the 110, if you're really limited on space and you want to incorporate a conveyor into your workflow, and say you're working from home, small room, that isn't a machine to look at in that aspect. But if you're not concerned with space, at minimum, you're going to get the mid-size machine with the dual elements. And if you can afford a little bit more money, the cost is not that much more to jump up to the 3-element machine. I think they're $6,800 or $7,000, somewhere in that range. That's a good machine for the money, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Bastex is a great company and great reputation, great products. I got a question here. Why can I not use third-party inks that are cheaper than Epson?
Well, as far as the head design with Epson, this is one thing to keep in mind with the industry and the evolution of DTG in general. A lot of companies started coming out using the earlier versions, the 4000s, initially for doing DTG and creating a movable bed, things of that nature. And then the biggest issue with those people is the white ink clogging the heads, okay? And the reason is because the head wasn't designed for that, okay? And after the industry started evolving, Epson decided to get into it. They created a new head in the process of doing that. This head that they have today, they do not sell to anybody else in the industry. The other thing that they did is they brought all their service back in under their control, okay? They have a contract with a national company, and they're really the only authorized service people to work on the machines. I was actually an authorized tech on the earlier models, which they're not training. We've talked to them as dealers to see if they're going to train in the future, and it's always putting us all off and saying, oh yeah, we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it. They want to control everything at this point because of the technology that they evolved into. If you really look at the DTG now, the F2100, the way it maintains itself and the minimal amount of service that you have to do as an individual to keep that machine running it makes it really simple. It really does. In comparison to what people had to do 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago to maintain a machine or head replacements. We have an original prototype. It's over 3 years old, and we still have the original head in it. I've heard of people that maintain their machines with these new heads, even the earlier 2000, and they have 6 years into their initial head. The thing is if you take care of your stuff, it's going to take care of you at the end of the day. So again, with the head itself, the plastic, the membranes, everything that's the components of the head itself were designed to work with Epson's ink as well. So when you throw third-party products in there, they're not made to work with that head. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is something that people don't realize, that when you're talking about ink, you're talking about microns as well. And if people know what microns are, it's dust, okay? Let's imagine a particle of water that has a size of the little droplet or the size of the ball that water consists of. The Epson ink is a specific micron, and a lot of these private label products might be a bigger droplet size. That's going to be hard to squeeze through that nozzle. It's like trying to put a marble through a garden hose versus a golf ball. It's going to get stuck. So the thing is these water droplets, a lot of people don't realize you can adjust the size. And I don't know how they do it. It's very complex how they mix inks. But Epson's is designed to flow through the head properly without clogging or minimal clogging. Because you really look at it at the end of the day, your yellow, magenta, cyan, and black usually always flow perfectly. It's your white is the issue. And that doesn't have anything to do with the size of the droplet. It has to do with the drying characteristics of the ink. So as soon as it gets exposed to air, it wants to start drying. And any ink that's sitting on the surface of where the nozzles are out, it's going to start creating a crust. Kind of like Jeff's mouth when he starts talking sometimes. No.
Well, those are great answers, Roy, and I appreciate that. And here's what I tell people: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, your number one thing that people have always complained about with direct-to-garment printer, and I've been doing this as long as DTG's been around. I mean, we all have in the office. Yeah. Is people have always complained about these print heads breaking down and the white ink and the clogging. It's nonstop. But that was all the old way of making direct-to-garment, where they took a paper printer print head and took a new ink that wasn't designed to go through there and put it together. It might work great for 6 months, and then eventually that print head just breaks down. But now Epson has it figured out. They got an ink that works with a print head, and it works great. And like you said, that printer we have right behind you, you can't actually see the SpeedTreater behind you, but off to the side a little bit. We've had that in our office for over 3 years, and we've never replaced that print head. So why would you want to go put something else in it that could possibly start breaking that print head now? Now, here, we brought up, actually, I don't remember if you brought up warranty, but when your printer is under warranty, if you introduce a third-party ink into your printer while it's under warranty, you will void the warranty. So you definitely don't want to do that while it's under warranty. And now Epson allows you to extend that warranty for 4 more years. So you can keep your Epson F2100 under warranty for a total of 5 years. And nobody else does that. That's amazing. So
well, nobody does it that includes the head. It includes everything with Epson.
Right, everything.
Bumper to bumper warranty.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is most manufacturers, their head replacement warranty is only 90 days. So if you put a new head in it, you're still on a short leash with a new head going in on the amount of time that they're going to give you to warranty that as well. And getting back to the ink prices, it's, people are really concerned about the cartridge cost. I would venture to say, if you buy a good product to print on, you have more flexibility in Garment Creator to cut your ink settings back, and this reverts back to people talking about third-party rips, that I can save money. You can't save money on buying a rip and putting less white ink down on a crappy, thicker or more coarse weave. It ain't going to happen. If you don't have enough white on it to begin with, you're not going to get a good print. So there's no way for a rip to cut back on that white and still give you a good print, because it's the white base that sets the layer for the colors to sit on. And that's the most expensive part of the print. So at the end of the day, if you have a good quality product to print on, you have more flexibility with your settings, your costs go down with the amount of ink you're putting on a single garment. The other thing is making sure that you charge the right price. Don't work hard for a minimal amount of money. And that's the biggest thing. I think looking at it from a silkscreen mentality versus a DTG mentality. I was talking to a silkscreener yesterday, and he completely gets it. If I can set up my screen press, a 2-3 color job and print 100 shirts in 35 minutes, okay, 40 minutes tops. So let's just say between setting up the screens, printing 100 shirts, I can get that done in an hour of production time, okay? And I make $3 a shirt, okay? And after an 8-hour day, he's going to make $2,800. It's going to take me in a production environment with one employee with the 3 pieces of equipment, heat press, pre-treater, and if you're doing a pretty good size design, you're looking at almost an 8-hour day with breaks and lunch and all this stuff incorporated. I'm not going to make $3 a shirt, okay? I need to make minimum $10 a shirt wholesale, $20 retail. So it depends on your model. Am I selling retail and wholesale? Because if I do wholesale, I'm only making $100 or $1,000 for that day production versus $2,800. So if I want to make more and I'm doing a lot of wholesale, I incorporate a second machine. Now I can push out $2,000 profit a day. And I could probably even do it with 1.5 employees, so to speak, because the machine takes up a lot of time if the guy really hustles. But if I'm doing retail, I'm at $2,000 a day in profit, doing 100 shirts at $20 profit per shirt. Okay.
Good answer. Although you're getting awfully close to crossing over into Terry and Jay waters there with marketing stuff, but that's all good. Good stuff.
Hey, I love what Roy just said. This is the
love it, Jay.
This is the puppet master. Roy, you just made a really,
you taught me well, Jay, right?
You made a really great point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, no problem.
So Henry just asked real quick, do you pause in between printing white ink? If so, what would you recommend? And you kind of answered this before. That really just depends on the shirt and your settings and in Garment Creator, how much ink you put down, right?
Yeah, I would venture to, let me just put it to you this way. If you don't understand the white base and the process as well with the ink coming down, the coloring coming down the white, incorporate a pause, okay? 5 to 10 seconds. And make it your goal over 30-day period to start looking at it closer. Don't just look at it from, you know, way up here, standing above the printer. Put your head down to the fabric level and look across the fabric at an angle. You're going to see shiny, wet areas in there. Now, in your white settings, you can actually change the way the white goes down on the shirt to where you could take these heavy areas of white that may cause you to incorporate a pause and redistribute some of that ink to the other areas to give you better coverage. And usually that's going to be done under adding more white ink down below under all the settings other than 6. Once you hit to level 6, it changes completely. But if you're printing on any of the lower levels, between a 0 and 25 to 35%, depending on the design, it's going to redistribute the ink first and even it out. So if you have a little bit more white in some areas coming down as you're looking at it, then you can reset that job up to redistribute the white ink to where you don't have to incorporate a pause. The other thing is if you're looking through the glass on the top of the printer, even as a seasoned, you know, I would say DTG, experienced person that I am, I still watch my white base go down on the design that I print for the first time every time. So if I'm opening a design and printing it for my very first time, I'm watching the white go down through this glass of the printer. I can stop it immediately. If it's too much white, then I can cut it back. If it's not enough white, I can add more. And then I can stop it, and if it just stripes about 1/4 of an inch on the top edge of the shirt and I don't touch it, I can just resume and print right over that. So it's getting to the point where you in your mind can recognize where my density change is to get a good print, okay? If I don't have a good density of white, then I'm not going to get a good color, print overall. The color isn't going to be vibrant. I have to have that base first. So
Okay.
depending on the shirt type and the design, that's where it's all going to be related to. But I don't like to incorporate a pause at all when I'm running in the lower settings. If you're doing a level 6, you're going to always have to incorporate a pause. So a 30-second pause to 60-second pause. So let's say, for instance, I don't want to add a lot, but I want that thick white base. Then I can use a heat gun and blow it away from the printer and stand at the side of the machine to start drying that top layer of the white to accept the second layer, and again, the second layer of white before it accepts the color ink. So that'll shorten your pause time. You could actually do a 10-second pause and just use the heat gun in lieu of a 60-second pause and save a lot of time.
Yeah, and you can't really go too long on a pause, right? You're just slowing down your production time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, Roy, I am so grateful that you have shared with us today your vast database of knowledge that is contained in your brain. It's super helpful and useful to these people, I'm sure, and to me. It's good to know as a salesperson. Thank you to Jay Bassell, who's chimed in a couple times. There he is.
Only to let you guys know how well this went over. And I know, Jeff, you said this at the beginning, but I really hope that people understand this was a direct request from so many of our clients, and even folks that aren't our clients yet, that are excited to really dig in a little deeper and have a better understanding of their printers and some of the technical aspects of it. So you asked and we delivered, or I should say Jeff and Roy delivered. You guys did a fantastic job, and I really hope that this series is something that we can continue. I guess we'll wait and see if people really enjoy this. We had a lot of folks sign up late, so that's a good indicator that the interest is there. So I just want to tell you guys thank you. If you didn't see our last webinar, we talked specifically about printing with our new shoe platen and the process from start to finish. Roy went from A to Z and did a great job, went deep, didn't skip any steps. So please go back and watch one of those previous webinars. And Jeff, you know what? Guess what?
What, Jay? Tell me.
On Thursday, 2 days from now, Terry and I will have special guests from the manufacturer of those platens. We're going to get a little sneak peek behind the scenes of what goes into it.
So Terry's back?
Terry's back. Yeah, he's back. He takes the summer off and he goes to France. You remember that.
And but have him back in a webinar.
Yeah, he's back. Terry and I are going to interview Marcia Derryberry and Eric Neftel. I think I said his name correct. Eric from Action Illustrated. Whoops. Action Engineering. That's a slip. Old days. So that's happening on Thursday. And for those of you who want to watch any previous webinars, this is where you go. Visit our website, and it will take you to our YouTube channel. We really would appreciate it if you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is probably our #1 platform. You will instantly get a notification whenever there is a new video that's uploaded, so that's an advantage to you. And as you know by now, we are not hardcore selling on our webinars. We are training with great people like Jeff and Roy. Thank you guys again.
Thank you,
and then Jeff, why don't you close it? This is the key contact page, and then you can wrap up.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Appreciate the compliments. Very nice of you. So go to our website, equipmentzone.com. If you have questions for support, you can contact us at 201-797-1504 or support@equipmentzone.com. We will get back to you. We will answer your questions. If you have a sales question, you can contact me, jeff.m@equipmentzone.com. We are very happy to help. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.